What I'm curious about in this video is what actually happened between Katy and Orlando. And it hurt her feelings. Of course she was hurt. He told her the whole thing looked ridiculous. I mean, if that's true. New reports from sources close. Again, take this as you will. These are sources coming in. I can't confirm any of this, but I'm curious what you guys think.
The interview wasn't loud. There was no dramatic headline. It's no sudden outburst. It's just Orlando Bloom still, steady eyes, slightly tired, sitting across from a journalist who asked a question no one had dared frame so directly before. There's been a lot of speculation, the interviewer began, about what it's like being with someone as present as Katy Perry. What's the truth of it all? Orlando didn't flinch. He smiled. A tight, practiced smile. One he'd used in press tours, red carpets, endless nights of telling a story. That wasn't quite his dot. Then he exhaled slowly. The truth, he said. The truth is, it was never quiet. There it was. A sentence heavy enough to shift the whole room. No one expected that. Not from him. Not from someone who, for years, had played the role perfectly. The romantic partner. The supportive fiancé. It's the man who nodded while the spotlight circled around someone louder. But this time, he didn't dodge. He leaned in. She's brilliant, he said. She's electric. But when you live inside that current every day, you start to lose your own frequency. The internet broke within minutes. Clips spread. Analysts dissected the tone. Fans went searching for past moments-old interviews, awkward red carpet glances. The way he sometimes stood just behind her, not beside her. People remembered interviews where she cut him off mid-sentence. People remembered how often he was there, but how rarely he was heard. Now, they were hearing him in the interview. Orlando didn't accuse, he didn't attack, he explained. I wasn't trying to escape her. I was trying to remember myself. Comment section turned emotional fast. He's been carrying this in silence for years. This wasn't an interview. This was a release. This is what a man sounds like when he's no longer scared to speak. And Katy. She hadn't responded. Not yet. But her silence was now louder than anything. She could say, the silence didn't just linger, it roared. For days, Katy Perry said nothing. No post, no cryptic tweet. No publicist issued statement about mutual respect or private matters. It's just a void. And in that void, Orlando's words echoed louder. Clips, resurfaced moments that once looked quirky, now looked sharp. A backstage video from a European awards show where Katy playfully shouted over him. A red carpet where she interrupted his answer to joke about her dress. A talk show where he sat with the expression of a man waiting to be handed the mic. But knowing he wouldn't be, they weren't red flags. They were red patterns. And now, fans were seeing them clearly. Orlando's interview continued to trend. Not because of scandal, but because of something even more rare in Hollywood. Restraint. He hadn't spilled secrets. He'd told his truth. There were days, he had said, where I felt like an accessory. And when you start to feel ornamental in your own relationship, that's when the loneliness hits different. That sentence went everywhere. People quoted it. Therapists reposted it. Podcasters turned it into a full episode. Because for once, a celebrity breakup narrative wasn't about betrayal or cheating or chaos. It was about quiet erosion, about a man who had spent years in love but also in the background, behind the scenes. Insiders started talking. One former stylist leaked that Orlando often asked to have his fittings done separately. A sound tech from one of Katy's tours said he was always there, never in the way, but also never allowed to be present. And then came the message. Late at night, Katy posted a photo. Black and white. Just a mirror and an empty chair. No caption. People read into it immediately. Some said it was guilt. Others said it was a message, I see now, but Orlando didn't respond. He didn't repost. He didn't shade. Because he'd already said what he needed to say. And that, more than anything, shifted the narrative. A man who once played the prince, in a fantasy, had stepped off the storybook page and Into his own reality, Hollywood reacted slowly at first, then all at once. For years. Orlando and Katy had been seen as the stable couple. The mature ones. The ones who dressed quirky but stayed. Committed. But now, a ripple moved through the elite circles. Not because there was a scandal, but because a man had calmly, carefully rewritten the script. And that terrified people more than chaos ever could. A-list actors began dropping cryptic quotes in interviews about emotional space and being heard behind the scenes. A well-known director tweeted, "Sometimes the loudest person in the relationship isn't the most present. No names, but everyone knew." Podcasts exploded. Panels debated. Was Katy too much? Was Orlando too soft? Was this just two different energies that never found sync? But then something strange happened. People stopped taking sides because the more they watched the interview, the more they saw themselves. Not in the glamour, but in the disconnect. In the quiet resentment. In the exhaustion of loving someone. Who couldn't hear your silence? Fans flooded comment sections. This isn't about celebrity. This is about every relationship where you had to shrink just to stay. He didn't leave. He returned to himself. And then came the moment no one expected: an awards show. Red carpet, cameras flashing. And then Katy alone, dressed. In something dramatic, as always. But there was something muted behind the eyes, a stiffness. Like armor wasn't fitting the same. Moments later, Orlando not with her. On the same carpet, but further down, separate, intentional. They hadn't been seen together in public in weeks. But that night, they were both presenting different categories. Different vibes. Still tethered by headlines and history. Backstage, sources say they passed each other only once. She nodded, he nodded. Back. No words. No fight. No fake kiss for the cameras. Just to people who had once loved, loudly now standing. In the silence that followed truth. And somehow it felt louder than ever. Want me to continue with Katy's first full response? Orlando's next move? Or how the breakup reshaped it took 13 days. 13 days of silence, speculation, dissected. Body language and viral quotes. 13 days of Katy Perry being asked everywhere. Online and off why she hadn't responded. Why she looked different. And whether Orlando Bloom had just told the truth she never expected to face in public. And then, at 9:03 a.m. on a Tuesday, the post dropped a black square, white text. No caption, no emojis, no comment thread. Just 4 sentences. I am not perfect. I am intense. I am loud. I love recklessly. Sometimes I take up too much space. And sometimes I don't know when to give it back. The internet froze. Because this wasn't denial. This wasn't PR. This was recognition. No mention of Orlando. No defense. No spin, just a woman. Finally acknowledging what the man who loved her had lived with for years. The post reached 20 million views within hours. It was shared by celebrities, therapists, even relationship coaches. One caption read, "This is how you respond to being held accountable with humility, not retaliation." And behind the screen, Orlando didn't say a word. He didn't repost it, didn't like it, didn't comment. But sources close to him told Variety. He read it. He appreciated it. But he's not going back, not because of anger, but because of clarity. That line alone sent shockwaves. This wasn't a breakup. It was a departure. The beginning of a new era. For both of them. Because sometimes, love isn't about returning to each other. It's about finally seeing each other. Clearly. And walking away with grace still intact. Orlando didn't stage a comeback. He didn't need to. There were no cryptic photos. No beachside healing shoots. No post-breakup beard or PR-crafted interviews about moving forward. Instead, he moved quietly, purposefully. He was spotted in Prague, working on a new indie film. Smaller budget, heavy script. Psychological drama with no explosions. No franchises. Just dialogue. Space reflection. A journalist asked him during a set visit, "Why this role now?" He looked up and said, "Because it lets me breathe. And for a long time, I didn't even realize I wasn't." Back in LA, the response was different. Katy went loud again at first. A fiery Vegas performance with bold visuals, wilder than usual, her voice sharp and charged. Some said it was a statement. Others said it was cover. But a week later, the show ended in something rare. She paused mid-song, looked out at the crowd and whispered, "You can love someone deeply and still forget to make room for them." The mic caught it. The fans recorded it. The moment spread like lightning dots suddenly. She wasn't performing. She was unraveling, and people loved her more for it. Not because she was broken, but because she was finally real. Then came the co-parenting moment. A quiet day at a park in Malibu. Their child's birthday. No paparazzi invite. No press release. But someone captured it from afar. Figures on a bench, watching their daughter run through the grass. No tension. No flash dot, just Orlando handing Katy a juice box. Katy laughing at something he muttered. No one spoke about it publicly, but the photo went everywhere. This is how adults break up. This is what healing can look like. Love isn't always forever, but respect can be. And that was the story now. Not a breakup, not blame, not silence turned bitter, but something very few celebrity couples ever manage to leave behind: peace. The media tried to shape it like a love lost, but the public refused to play along. For once, people weren't demanding sides. They weren't dissecting drama or screaming for confessions. They were watching, quietly, closely. Because something about this breakup felt different. It wasn't weaponized. It wasn't monetized. It wasn't about winning. It was about two people finally stepping out of a narrative they didn't write but had. It's been performing for years, and the fans followed suit. Katy's fan base, long known for its high-energy loyalty, began to shift tone. They weren't angry with Orlando. They didn't cancel him. They shared clips of the park moment with captions like, "This is grown. This is rare. We stand real maturity now." Orlando's fans, often quieter, suddenly became more vocal, not in attack, but in gratitude. They'd seen him silent for too long. Now, they saw a man who'd reclaimed his breath and didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. A viral tweet summed it up best. She taught him to shine. He taught her how much space that takes, and now they both know. Media outlets had no scandal to stretch, no affair, no screaming match. No PR team denying what everyone already knew, so they pivoted. Suddenly, outlets were running stories not about breakup drama, but about emotional evolution. Think pieces on co-regulation, identity loss in partnerships, and the invisible weight of living beside someone the world already thinks they know. They weren't just Orlando and Katy anymore. They were a mirror, a quiet reminder that even love with the best intentions can still suffocate when there's no room for individuality. And as the months passed, the headlines faded, but the respect didn't. Orlando's film premiered to standing ovations at a European festival. Katy released a stripped-down single, just her voice and a piano. No synths, no neon. And the lyrics? "You gave me room. I didn't know I needed it. So I filled it with noise. I never heard your silence." That was it. The final chapter. Not a burn. Not a goodbye. Just the sound of two people finally walking away from each other without slamming the door. Months later, the ripple effect reached further than either of them could have imagined. Not just into gossip columns or fan podcasts, but deep into the DNA of Hollywood's relationship culture. Where before, breakups were public collapses, tabloid bait served with chaos now. There was a new blueprint quietly forming, one built on softness, not spectacle. Other couples took note. A young pop singer and her actor boyfriend posted a joint statement about learning to separate with dignity. A veteran actress quoted Katy's lyric, I filled it with noise in her IG story and added, "You been there?" Therapists began referencing Orlando's interview in articles and sessions. Relationship experts used clips from his sit down to talk about emotional presence, invisible resentment, and the weight of performance inside love. Even journalists changed tone, not asking what went wrong, but instead, what did they learn? What did they unlearn? And through all of it, Orlando and Katy remained apart, but calm. No reunion teases, no rebound spectacles. Just two people now existing more clearly outside each other's orbit. In late spring, they both appeared at the same charity gala. Not announced, not staged, but seen. They greeted each other with a light embrace. No cameras followed, no microphones. Hovered. They stood in a group, laughed briefly at something only they understood. A shared moment, but no lingering touch. No performance of "look, we're still close." Just the energy of two people who had once shared something massive and let it go without burning it down. As the night wore on, they drifted to different conversations. At one point, someone asked Orlando if he missed that life. The red carpets, the couple branding, the always-on glow. He smiled softly, looked across the room, not at Katy, just into the space between it all, and said, "I don't miss it. I understand it now." That quote never made the headlines, but it didn't need to, because the real story had already been told. Not in tweets, not in breakup tracks, not in red carpet PR stunts, but in the quiet dot, in the way two people let go and didn't have to hate each other to heal. The next chapter didn't open with a scandal. It began with a whisper, one so subtle, most people missed it. Orlando Bloom appeared on a podcast no one expected him to say yes to. Not a glossy celebrity sit-down, okay? A modest, long-form discussion on identity, transitions, and self-respect hosted by a former therapist turned author. It wasn't designed for gossip, but it delivered something better. Truth, he didn't talk about Katy by name, not once, but every word was about her. About what that time taught him. You can lose yourself, he said, by loving someone too. Much in the way they need to be loved, okay? And not in the way you're capable of giving. The host sat back. Orlando continued, voice low, eyes steady. There's a kind of love that starts as admiration. You're drawn to the fire. You think? It'll warm you, but some fires aren't meant to keep you warm. They're meant to keep everyone else watching. That clip alone went viral in under an hour. Thousands of people, famous, unknown, divorced, never married, shared it like scripture. This healed something I didn't even know needed healing. I've never seen a man describe this feeling. Before, this isn't about Orlando and Katy. This is about us. Meanwhile, Katy was quiet, not in hiding, just shifting. She canceled 2 appearances, not with drama, just with honesty. Her team said she was reevaluating what kind of energy she wants to bring to the stage. A few weeks later, she posted a photo of herself barefoot in a sunlit studio, scribbling lyrics with no glam squad, no filters. It's just a pen and a single sentence written on paper. Less glitter, more grace. And then, in the stillness, she dropped something unexpected. A short documentary, not for theaters. Just 11 minutes on YouTube. Titled, "The Volume Was Too High." It featured voiceovers from her journal, footage of her alone in green rooms, shots of Orlando laughing with her child, sitting silently in dressing rooms while she got mixed up. The final scene was her alone in a mirror. No makeup. No music. She looked up and said, "He didn't leave because I was too much. He left because I didn't know when to turn it down." The screen faded to black. And that was all. No call-out, no manipulation, no attempt to control the story, just an ending or maybe a beginning for both of them. Finally, free to be loud, soft, present, and whole. On their own terms. Months passed, the world moved, and as it always does, but something lingered. Not tension, not scandal, Respect the kind that doesn't demand attention but earns it quietly over time. Katy disappeared from pop headlines and reemerged somewhere unexpected, in silence. She took a writing retreat in Portugal. No press, no paparazzi, just a vineyard, a journal, and her own echo. The music she began writing wasn't designed for charts, didn't have drops. It didn't have layers of synth. It had space, lyrics, leaked, raw, tentative. One chorus whispered through the industry. I filled the house with mirrors so I wouldn't have to face the door you knocked so gently, and I kept singing over it. It was clear she wasn't making music to reclaim anything. She was making music to understand what she never made room for. Meanwhile, Orlando was changing too, but not alone. Photos surfaced of him walking hand in hand through a London park with a woman no one recognized at first. Not an actress, not a model. A documentary editor, private, grounded. Someone who smiled with her eyes. Not her Instagram. When reporters asked, Orlando didn't dodge. He smiled. She listens. That was it, and it told everyone everything they needed to know. No announcement. No performative timeline. Just a man who had learned the value of being heard. Finally, choosing someone who already knew how, and then fate did what it always does in Hollywood. It placed them in the same room again. A benefit gala for children's mental health. Katy was set to perform a stripped-down version of her new single. Orlando was slated to introduce the keynote speaker, no theatrics. But when she stepped onto that stage and began to sing, the room quieted like a cathedral. No dancers, no light show, just her voice. The lyrics, not angry, not bitter, just reflective. The chorus unfolded. I talked over your kindness. I laughed through your stillness. You gave me silence. And I filled it with noise. The camera didn't pan to him, but someone in the back caught it on their phone. Orlando. Standing, not applauding, just gliding, not with pride, with peace. Because this wasn't about reunion. Wasn't about reuniting lovers or correcting past choices. It was about two people finally living fully in the space. They'd both once crowded, not beside each other, but beyond. The final full circle moment didn't happen on stage. It didn't trend. It wasn't clipped into TikToks or turned into PR gold. It happened in a hallway, months after the benefit gala. They crossed paths again this time. Not for an event, not for a performance, but for a school function. Their daughter's class was hosting a poetry afternoon. Parents were invited. Chairs were small, lights were fluorescent. The magic was in the ordinary. Orlando arrived first, quiet as always. Jeans, a soft jacket, no entourage. Katy arrived a few minutes later, low-key. Sunglasses pushed into her hair. Holding a tiny flower bouquet from a corner florist when their daughter stood up to read her poem, hands shaking. Voice trembling, they didn't look at each other. They both looked only at her, and they smiled. Not for the camera, but for the same reason at the same moment. Because this little human is the best part of their story. After the reading, the kids filed out to the hallway for juice boxes and giggles. Parents lingered, making small talk. Katy and Orlando found themselves near the coffee table. No one else close, just the two of them, again in a quiet space. She spoke first. She's getting good with words. He nodded. She gets that from you. Katy smiled, looked down, then back at him. Thank you for not turning your silence into anger. Orlando leaned in, not close, just enough. Thank you for eventually hearing it? No more needed to be said. They parted with a gentle touch, her hand brushing his arm, his fingers resting just long enough to acknowledge the journey. Not lovers, not strangers, just to people who built something beautiful, then let go with dignity, because love doesn't always have to last forever to be called real. Sometimes. The most powerful endings are the ones that leave both people whole. Fade to black.